What's going on, guys? Baseball Stud 294 here. Now today what we're looking at is my personal SPR Mod 0. So you may or may not have seen this, but I actually have a video series up on my DMR build on how I built this. So to make this short and sweet, this essentially was an AGM M16 that I won in a mystery box, and I very quickly realized that it's more or less a subpar gun for what I wanted it to be. So I decided to turn it into a DMR build series. So I have a few videos up on my channel right now that talk about what went into the gun both internally and externally, essentially giving you guys an overview on how it turned itself into the gun it is today. So if you guys want to see what went into it or want to know how the parts worked out, definitely go check those videos out. But today I'm going to be reviewing this as it is now, so the SPR Mod 0. If you didn't know, it's obviously an M16 variant with the full stocks as well as a full M16 length rail system. And SPR itself stands for Special Purpose Rifle, and it's a Mark 12 variant. So they have the Mark 12 Mod 1 and then the Mark 12 Mod 0, which is what I have here. So I'm going to cut frame and kind of go over briefly the different parts of the Alright guys, now as with all of my videos, we're going to start with the front of the gun and work our way backwards. So as you can see, starting from the very front, this does come, the kit that I purchased, this was the Matrix front end conversion kit. Again, I have this listed in my DMR build, so if you have questions, check that out. But it does give you a full black SPR styled flash hider that's actually unscrewable at two different points. You can unscrew it here, which will expose your threading, or you can unscrew the front, which will actually leave this joint here, and it will unscrew it at that point. I'm not quite sure really why they did that, but I guess it gives you a little bit of extra room if you wanted to utilize a different type of suppressor. So another interesting thing to note is this was listed as having a 509mm barrel, both the D-Boys and the A and K versions. However, on all of these, and this stays true to the Matrix style front-end conversion kit that I got for this gun, the 509 barrel will actually run, the inner barrel at least, will run all the way to the very tip of this flash hider. So if you guys do want to upgrade the barrel, be sure that you guys know that. So if you have a broken flash hider, or if you don't like seeing some of the inner barrel exposed through the flash hider, you may want to reconsider and get something shorter. But for my purposes, I really don't care. And the fact that I have a Mad Bull Type bore, it's black, so it stays pretty incognito, if you will, inside that flash hider. So you do get a front iron flip-up sight, which is nice. However, you know, being that it's DMR, I don't recommend always using those. Definitely, if you have the cash, purchase yourself an optic and go from there. This will be the big part here. If you see the front handguard, that's what's going to be the distinguishing piece of the SPR Mark 12 Mod 0 versus the SPR Mark 12 Mod 1. The Mod 1 will have a full-length rail system, both on the right, bottom, and top side of this handguard, whereas the Mod 0, as you can see, does not. So you simply can unscrew these, just like on some of the Magpul handguards, you can unscrew these rail systems and place them in these designated locations wherever you so choose. Being that it's a DMR, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. So obviously I have a Recon style bipod at the bottom here. I know a lot of people prefer the Harris bipod, but for my purposes, and utilizing those before, when you lay prone, it's actually really uncomfortable because those bipods are actually a little bit higher up just from their natural setting without even extending the legs. So you actually can have an uncomfortable position when you have to arch your back to look down your scope. Not always, but that's sometimes what I've experienced depending on when I'm laying prone. So I like this smaller Recon style bipod. It still gives it enough elevation off the ground to where I can lay and have an even profile of looking down my sights. So again, that's mounted on just the bottom rail system there. So definitely a nice feature. I can talk about this too since you get a good picture of it. This is the full length monolithic rail that runs along the entire top of the gun, and it is raised about an inch off of the receiver and handguard set. Unlike an M16 or M4 where it's flush, this is raised, so kind of a cool look there, similar to like what you'd see on a 417 or 416, an H&K one. So those are definitely cool as well. But that's pretty much all I have to talk about for the front of this gun. I'm going to go ahead and move it back and show you guys the receiver. Alright guys, now that we're looking at the heart and soul of the gun, the upper and lower receiver, they're both composed of metal, as well as the front handguard, of course, and that is actually the last piece, well, that including the full stock, are the last pieces of actually the AGM body. Otherwise, everything else on this gun is different. So we can start from the top. You can still see some more of that full monolithic rail. Looking at the back of it, you do have a flip up rear iron sight. However, it's nice because it's actually nice and flush with the rail itself. So there's a lever on the right side of this which you just simply pull, and this will snap up really nice and quickly, and it's adjustable just for windage. I would snap it up right now, however my scope is actually in the way of it right now, so not a a huge deal. You guys may know or may not know what it looks like, but it's nice. And I was actually surprised because sometimes with the cheap Chinese clones, they don't line up with their front sight. You have to adjust them yourself, which can sometimes be a hassle, but this one actually lines up pretty nicely. Not that I really use it that much, but it's just a nice feature to know that for whatever reason, if something breaks, if batteries die, you can always take off the scope and just use the iron sights and be somewhat accurate with them. So that's definitely cool. The charging handle is nice. It's full metal. Now, something that I've found to be pretty common with both this version, so the AGM body, as well as some of the D-Boys bodies, and even possibly the A&K version bodies, because a lot of them are all just rebranded versions of the same gun. The cylinder inside the gearbox protrudes a little bit too far, so your dust cover will actually not close. That's what happened when I actually got the AGM out of the box. So I thought maybe it was the gearbox, maybe it was something with the dust cover itself, but it happened to be actually the way the gearbox sits inside of the receiver. So it's not, a critical issue. It's just something that you want to make sure that you don't get a lot of dust or dirt or whatever inside of there, which can then, get into your gearbox or have issues with your hop up. So not a huge deal though, as I mentioned. Looking at the bolt or the forward assist here, it does not do anything. It's just kind of there for looks, kind of bounces around, but that's typical for most of the airsoft guns. So then you got your fire selector switch. As you can see here, snaps into place very nicely. I did not disengage the full auto feature yet. I'm just kind of prohibiting myself from using it, just again because of the strength behind the spring on this thing. And then also it's interesting to note that there's no trades. I know that AGM, a lot of the times the pictures online show that they have trademarks, but for some reason a lot of the people that I know that have actually gotten them, and again the same mystery box I received, they did not have trademarks. So it's not a huge deal. Some people like them, some people don't. I personally don't care. So the fire selector options are not painted in. I know that the D-Boys and possibly the NK versions have serial numbers up here. Those are as well just painted on, so they'll most likely just kind of chip off down the road, but this is just nice and clean, nice and black. The mag well itself is actually a really nice fit. This gun, when you originally get it, as an M16 at least, I got a M16 style mag, but I decided to purchase some P mags for them, some short stacker ones, and I thought these were actually going to be mid caps. That's what they were listed as, but it turns out it was a high cap. Holds 110 rounds, and as you can see, it actually fits really snugly in there. You have to push it in with some force, which I like a lot because that makes a really nice flush seal with the hop up unit, so creates a great air seal, and I've had no feeding issues whatsoever on it. I would have liked it to be mid caps, but you know what, a high cap works just the same. 110 rounds is pretty nice to have, so prevents me from having to reload so much. But again, looking forward, or I guess further back on the bottom of this thing, same trigger, full metal trigger, trigger guard, things like that, nothing changed there. And then you have the M16 or M4 style handguard, or excuse me, grip style here. You can replace these. A nice thing that this did come with is, if you can see on the bottom, see if I can get it, there you go, it's vented, which I was really surprised that the AGM model had that. I thought maybe they would just be a solid cover there, but it's nice that they actually put it in there and it's vented. So since this is pulling such a heavy spring with the Matrix Turbo 3000 motor, this actually gets warm, so it's nice to have some venting to allow the motor to cool itself so it doesn't overheat. So that's definitely cool as well. But other than that, that's pretty much it for the receiver. Again, it's pulling the M160 spring with the Matrix custom gearbox. Everything's been tuned, and if you guys want to see more on the gearbox itself, go check out again my DMR build videos. I talk about it a little bit more in depth. You can see what it looks like and things like that. It's also, I should mention too, it's got the Madable Ultimate Hop-Up system, which I may have talked about at the front of this video, but it's definitely works well with this gun. The spring itself is starting to settle down a little bit, so it's shooting now right around 390, 400 feet per second with the 0.3 gram BBs, and as well as the hop up issues, which I was having some extreme hop going on. The hop up got broken in a little bit, or at least the bucking did, so it's actually not hopping quite as much, but I still want to try shooting this thing with something higher than 0.3 grams to see if that helps aid the situation. But other than that, again, if you want to know more information, go check out the custom build videos that I put up. So, alright guys, now as you can tell, we're looking at the last half of the gun. Obviously it's the M16 style full stock. This is again what the SPR's Mark 12s have, so it's nice that I kept this on from the M16 that I did have. It's actually rubberized, so it's a plastic stock itself, and then there's a rubberized coating on the outside. You can possibly see some of the scratches on it. I know there's a pretty deep one here that I got from some branches, things like that, but it's a little bit softer on your cheek as opposed to just the solid plastic, so that's definitely cool. You do have a metal sling point back here, but there's no sling point attachments at the front of the gun, since again this came as an M16. You did have one below the front post sight. However, the Mod 0 rail system does not have any spots for a rail, or excuse me, for a sling point attachment, so you may have to purchase one separately, but again, I don't usually use this with a sling, so it's okay. There's a metal butt pad, so it's not really that comfortable, but it is perforated, so it grips your gear pretty well. Then there's just a spring-loaded door, which you would simply just push down and pull out, and then there's your spot for your battery. Pretty common for all of these guns, whether it be a M16 or the SPRs or any other DMR. Most of them have similar type doors to expose the battery compartment. So it's very large, comes with small type Tamiya connectors, so if you have any batteries or anything like that, whether they're large or small, they'll definitely be able to fit in there, so there's lots and lots of room. Occasionally some people put actually like an old sock or something in there, just because if you compare, maybe a 9.6 would be about that big, so it's going to bounce around a lot. So if you're planning on running with this thing, and you don't want to damage your batteries or hear it clunking around against plastic, you can put some socks just to kind of pad it so it's a little bit quieter. But other than that, that's it. Decent stock. I'm going to go ahead and flip the gun over and we'll go from there, guys. Alright guys, now that we have the gun flipped over, I'm not going to show you the right side of the stock or the front handguard, just because it's an exact mimic of the left side. So to save some actual time on this video, I'm just going to show you the right side of the receiver set. So this is first and foremost what I was talking about, that the dust cover does not close, as you can see. It's simply because the cylinder is actually protruding too far into the window of or I guess where the shells would eject on the real steel version of this gun. So I tried, before I installed the upper and lower receiver together, I tried dremeling down a little groove here, thinking maybe that was the culprit. Obviously it wasn't, but so your gun, if you do get something similar, won't have this chiseled out. But other than that, again, it's not a huge deal. At the top, I'm going to move to the other side of the camera. You can see right here, there is that little switch. You would simply release it, and as you can see, it's spring-loaded. The rear iron sight is, but again, as I mentioned, my scope is actually in the way, so it's not going to flip all the way up. But it is, as I mentioned, adjustable for windage, but not elevation. So it's nice that it's straight and then it lines up with the front iron sight, as I mentioned. However, again, I always recommend getting some sort of optic for a longer ranged airsoft gun. You have the forward assist, which does not do anything. It's got a decent spring behind it, so it's fun to push, but it doesn't aid the gun in any way, so it's kind of nice, but it's nothing too critical for the gun itself. Then obviously with most of the M16s and M4 variants, it is not ambidextrous, so the fire selector on this side is painted, or I guess chiseled into the body. It's not painted, I'm sorry, but you cannot switch your selector options on the right side. It's just on the left side of the gun. Then you have your simple mag release, so it's definitely nice. There's also a pretty heavy spring behind this. It's heavier than some of the other guns I have, so it's definitely cool. Keeps the mag nice and secured inside of the gun itself. But other than that, guys, that's pretty much it for this side. You can see some of the screws that help to keep the top of this monolithic rail secured to the gun itself. There's also some on the reverse side of this as well, so I don't want to get too much into that. But I'm going to zoom out again and give you guys my final conclusion. Alright guys, and that is it. I moved the camera down a little bit just to show you a better perspective on the length of this gun, but obviously this gun outperforms, 70 to 80% of the guys out on the field with just a stock gun, or even some of the upgraded guns, especially for what I've put into it. So if you have any questions about what I did or what's inside of the gearbox, go ahead and check out my DMR build series. Now, it's using my old camera on that video series, so bear with it. I know it's a little bit different than what I've done now, but if you have questions, check that out, or leave me a comment or a private message. I'll happily get back to you guys and answer any questions you have. But this is a great gun for those looking to get into some sort of longer range engagements or even medium range engagements, whether you get the A&K version, the D-Boys version, or build your own like I did. It's a very, very fun gun to use. It's got a great custom look to it, and it'll surely turn some heads for you guys out on the field. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to check back for any further updates on my channel. So take care, guys.